The zip tie bit into her wrists before she even had time to say her name. Security Officer Dale Murchison didn't ask for ID. He didn't ask for an explanation. He looked at the woman standing in the lobby of the Hargrove Grand Hotel. A tall, black woman in a charcoal wool blazer, a single carry-on bag over her shoulder, eyes calm as still water, and he made a decision in about 4 seconds flat. He decided she didn't belong there. She did. Brigadier General Celestine Ware Odom had checked into this hotel 11 times in the past 6 years. Suite 14022, corner room, northeast-facing windows so she could watch the sunrise over the Potomac before her morning briefings. The front desk staff knew her name. The concierge kept a standing order for her coffee. The hotel itself was owned in part through a trust managed by the U.S. Army's Joint Venture Lodging Program, and Celestine happened to sit on the 3-person oversight committee that renewed that contract every 18 months, but Murchison didn't know any of that. What he knew was that a black woman in a blazer was walking toward the private elevator bank, reserved for diamond-tier guests and Pentagon liaisons, and she hadn't stopped at the front desk first. So he grabbed her arm. That was his first mistake. Celestine was 49 years old. She had survived 2 deployments to Afghanistan, 1 to Kuwait, and a congressional subcommittee hearing that lasted 11 hours without a bathroom break. She had not, in her adult life, been grabbed by a stranger without cause. The physical shock of it, fingers closing around her forearm without warning, sent a cold current straight up her spine. She stopped walking. She turned her head slowly and looked at the hand on her arm. Then she looked at the man attached to the hand. Murchison was maybe 32, stocky, a little sunburned, with the kind of swagger that comes from wearing a uniform in a building where you're the biggest thing in the room. His name tag said Murchison. Below it, Hargrove Grandisic. "Ma'am, this elevator is for hotel guests only." He said it loud enough that the couple at the front desk turned to look. "I am a hotel guest," Celestine said. Her voice was level, measured, the voice she used in briefings when someone said something she was going to have to correct. "Do you have a key card?" "My key card is in my bag. If you'll release my arm, I'll retrieve it." Murchison didn't release her arm. He tightened it. "I'm going to need you to come with me to the security desk first." A second officer appeared from a side corridor, younger, taller, with the unmistakable energy of someone looking for a reason. His tag read Peretz. He positioned himself at Celestine's other side without being asked. This was not a security check. This was a performance. "I am not going to the security desk," Celestine said, still calm. "I am going to my room. I have a briefing at the Pentagon at 0700, and I would like to sleep first. Now please remove your hand. We've had reports of non-guests attempting to access restricted floors," Murchison said, his voice dropping into something official-sounding rehearsed. "This is standard procedure." "For whom?" Celestine asked. Murchison blinked. "I've stayed at this hotel 11 times, she said. "I've never been stopped at this elevator, so I'd like to know, specifically, who this procedure applies to, and on what basis you've decided I meet that criteria tonight." Murchison's jaw tightened. Something passed between them. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time, and I'm going to tell you one more time," Celestine said. "My name is Celestine Ware Odom. I am a Brigadier General in the United States Army. I am a registered diamond-tier guest of this hotel, and if you do not remove your hand from my arm in the next 3 seconds, you will have committed assault on a federal officer." Murchison laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, dismissive, almost bored. "A general." He said it the way people say "sure, lady." "Right, and I'm the Secretary of Defense." "No," Celestine said quietly, "but I had breakfast with him last Thursday." The zip tie appeared from somewhere on Peretz's belt. She never fully understood why. There was no protocol in any hotel security manual that called for zip ties in a lobby. But Peretz produced one, and Murchison nodded, and before she could process what was happening, her wrists were bound in front of her with a plasticky click that echoed off the marble floors. The lobby went quiet. A woman near the concierge desk made a small sound, something between a gasp and a held breath. A man in a business suit stopped walking. The night auditor behind the front desk, a young woman named Tasha, who had worked the Hargrove Grand for 3 years, stood up very slowly from her chair. Celestine felt the plastic biting into her skin. She felt the eyes on her. She felt the particular humiliation of standing in a well-lit lobby, with her hands bound in front of her, like a shoplifter, while 2 men in security uniforms stood on either side of her looking satisfied with themselves. She did not let any of that show on her face. She had learned a long time ago that composure was its own kind of weapon. They walked her to the security office, a beige room behind the fitness center, the kind of room designed to feel small and official at the same time. A desk, a monitor showing 8 camera feeds, a filing cabinet. Murchison sat across from her. Perrette stood by the door. "We're going to need to verify your identity," Murchison said, pulling out a printed form. An actual paper form. Celestine hadn't seen one of those in a security context since 2003. "My identification is in my bag," she said, "which your colleague is holding." Perrette produced the bag. He set it on the desk without opening it. Murchison unzipped it himself. He dug through it, moving aside her travel toiletry kit, her laptop, a folder of printed briefing materials, stamped, and found her wallet. He pulled out her driver's license. He looked at it. He set it on the desk. Then he found her military ID. He looked at that one longer. The card was vertically oriented the way Audi Common Access cards are. The photo was her, stern-faced, direct gaze. The rank field read Brigadier General. The pay grade read 07. The issuing authority was the United States Army. Murchison set it next to the driver's license and looked at both of them for a moment. "These could be faked," he said. The air in the room changed. Tasha, the night auditor, had followed them. She was standing in the doorway now, behind Perrette's, and Celestine saw her eyes go wide at what Murchison had just said. "I want to speak with your hotel manager," Celestine said. "The duty manager's off the floor right now." "Then call him." "I'm not going to interrupt the manager over a what?" Celestine asked. Her voice was still even, but something in it had sharpened, the way a kitchen knife sounds different when it hits a cutting board just right. "Finish that sentence, Officer Murchison." "I'd like to hear you finish it." He didn't finish it. "Call the manager," Celestine said. "Or give me a phone. I have a call I'd like to make." Murchison leaned back. "You can make a call when we've completed the verification process. You have my driver's license. You have my military ID. You have a hotel guest list that you can access on that computer in approximately 15 seconds. What exactly remains to be verified?" Perrette shifted near the door. He still hadn't spoken. Something in his posture had changed, less certain than it had been in the lobby. Murchison looked at the monitor, then at the cards, then at Celestine. She could see the calculation running behind his eyes. The problem was that he'd already zip-tied her wrists. He was already in it. Backing down now meant admitting the mistake. And admitting the mistake, in front of Perrette's and Tasha, and however many lobby cameras had caught all of this, meant something he wasn't prepared for. So he doubled down. People always doubled down when backing down was the smarter play. "We're going to hold you here while we confirm with local authorities," he said. "You are going to call the police?" Celestine repeated slowly. "Because I am trying to go to my hotel room." "This is standard. Give me a phone." It was Tasha who spoke. She had stepped fully into the room now, her voice quiet but firm. "Mr. Murchison, I can pull up her reservation right now. She's in suite 1402. She's been a guest here since." Tasha looked at the screen on her own phone, which she'd clearly already checked. 2018. Murchison looked at Tasha the way certain men look at women who say inconvenient things. Like the words hadn't quite reached his ears. "This isn't your call, Tasha. Then let it be mine." The voice came from the doorway. A man in his 50s, hotel jacket half-buttoned, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, the look of someone who had been yanked out of a back-office dinner and was deeply unhappy about it. This was Warren Aldecott, the evening duty manager of the Hargrove Grand Hotel, and from the expression on his face, he had seen the lobby camera feed. He looked at Celestine. He looked at her bound wrists. His expression went through 4 different stages in about 2 seconds. "Mr. Murchison," Aldecott said carefully, "what is this?" "Security matter, Mr. Aldecott. Non-guest suspected of. General Ware Odom is a diamond-tier member of our program," Aldecott said. His voice was controlled in the way voices get when someone is very angry and very aware that there are cameras running. "She is in suite 1402. She has been a guest of this hotel for 6 years. She is." He stopped. He looked at her wrists again. "Are those zip ties?" "Yes," Celestine said. Aldecott closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. "Remove them," he said to Perrette. "Sir, the protocol, remove them now." The plastic came off with a small snapping sound. Celestine rotated her wrists. The red indentations would last until morning. "General," Aldecott said, "I am sincerely. I'd like to use a phone," she said. Not her phone. The hotel's landline, which was sitting right there on the desk. She wanted it witnessed. Aldecott gestured at it. Celestine sat down. She dialed a number from memory, a Washington, D.C. number, 2 area code. It rang twice. Pentagon duty officer. This is Sergeant First Class Donahue. Sergeant Donahue. This is Brigadier General Celestine Ware Odom. Authentication Kilo Foxtrot 77. I need you to log an incident at the Hargrove Grand Hotel in Arlington, Virginia. I've been physically restrained by hotel security personnel on no lawful basis. I need you to notify the duty JAG officer, and I need you to patch a message to the Deputy Chief of Staff's overnight line that I may be delayed for my 7 o'clock. A brief pause. Continuation confirmed, General Ware Odom. Logging now. Do you need MP support? Not at this time, but keep the line open. She set the phone on the desk without hanging up. Murchison looked at the phone, then at Celestine. The swagger was completely gone now. What was left underneath it was not pretty. Who did you call? He said. The Pentagon, Celestine said. The room was very quiet. The duty sergeant is logging this conversation, she continued. Everything said in this room in the last 40 seconds is now part of a military incident report. So if there's anything you'd like to clarify about tonight's events, Officer Murchison, now would be an excellent time. Murchison opened his mouth, then he closed it. Peretz had gone the color of old chalk. Aldecott stepped forward and placed himself, not quite physically but very nearly, between his security officers and the general. General, I want to assure you that this does not represent Mr. Aldecott, she said. I've been a guest of this hotel for 6 years. I've recommended it to 4 colleagues, who collectively bring 40 or 50 room nights a year to this property. I sit on the oversight committee that reviews the Army's lodging contract with this hotel chain. She let that land. I think you understand why I'm going to need more than an assurance tonight. Aldecott understood. By 11 p.m., Celestine was in suite 1402, ice pack on her wrists, laptop open, the city spread out below her through the northeast windows. Her son, Marcus Jr., had called from Chicago. He'd seen something on Twitter. She told him she was fine. He didn't believe her. Mom, people are posting about it, he said. The lobby cameras. Someone got footage. I know. They're zip-tying you. In the lobby. Mom. Marcus, I'm going to find a lawyer. Marcus, I have a briefing in 7 hours. I need you to let me work. She had barely hung up when her aide, Captain Yolanda Ferris, called to say that the incident had been flagged internally and that the Deputy Chief's office had already been briefed. Also, the JAG officer on duty wanted to know if she was planning to pursue formal action. She said she'd decide in the morning. What she didn't know that night was that Tasha, the night auditor, had made a copy of the lobby camera footage before Murchison could request its deletion, and that Tasha had given it to her boyfriend, who ran a local news blog with about 6,000 followers, and who had posted it at 10:43 p.m. with the caption, "Security guards zip-tied a black woman's wrists in the Hargrove Grand lobby tonight. She's an Army general." Video below. By midnight, it had been reshared 12,000 times. By 2 a.m., it had reached the verified accounts. By the time Celestine woke at 5:30 for her pre-briefing run, the phrase, "zipped us, zip-tie general," was the 3rd highest trending topic in the United States. She stood at the window, in her running clothes, and watched the Potomac, catching the first light of morning, and thought about all the women who looked like her, who had been zip-tied in lobbies and parking lots and police stations, and had no one to call. No Pentagon duty line, no authentication code, no diamond tier reservation to prove they had a right to stand where they were standing. She thought about that for a long time. Then she laced up her shoes and went for her run. The formal investigation moved quickly, the way things tend to move when they trend. The Army's Criminal Investigation Division opened a file within 48 hours. The hotel chain's corporate office in Dallas dispatched their VP of Operations, a carefully groomed man named Stewart, who arrived at the Hargrove Grand with an expression of controlled devastation and a document offering Celestine a substantial gesture of goodwill. She didn't sign it. Her personal attorney, who had been her college roommate and now ran a civil rights practice in D.C., told her not to sign anything until they understood the full scope of what they were dealing with. The full scope was, it turned out, considerable. Because the lobby camera footage, the footage Tasha had saved, was not the only footage. Aldecott, to his credit, had not ordered the footage deleted. He'd actually ordered it preserved the moment he walked into that security room and saw the zip ties. But Murchison, before the manager arrived, had gone to the secondary security station and attempted to access the system. He hadn't been able to delete it because the overnight backup had already run. What he had done was send a text message to someone, which the investigators later identified as the hotel's regional security director, a man named Fowler, that read simply, "Lobby cam tonight, 9:45. Take care of it." Fowler had not taken care of it in time. What the full footage showed was a pattern. 4 other incidents over the previous 14 months. 4 other guests, all black, all stopping at the private elevator bank, all stopped by Murchison, 3 of the 4, resulting in calls to local police. 2 had paid what Murchison described in an internal chat message as confusion fines. Essentially, settlements reached under duress in back offices. 1 had been detained and released after 2 hours with no charge and no apology. None of them had been able to call the Pentagon. The Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice opened an inquiry on the 4th day. Celestine gave her testimony in a conference room at the Army's Judge Advocate General's office, the same building where she'd attended dozens of briefings over the years. She wore her service uniform. Ribbon rack, unit citations, the Bronze Star she'd received after Kandahar. The investigators were professional and thorough. They asked her to walk through the timeline from the moment she entered the lobby. She did, without embellishment and without omission. At one point, one of the investigators, a quiet woman from the DOJ named Reyes, asked her whether she had been frightened. Celestine considered the question. "I was angry," she said. "I have been frightened in situations where I had reason to be frightened. This wasn't that. This was a man who looked at me and decided, in 4 seconds, that I didn't belong where I was standing. And then he built a whole tower of justifications on top of that 4-second decision. That's not scary. It's just very, very ordinary." Rise wrote something down. "What made you stay calm?" she asked. Celestine looked at her. "Because losing my composure was the only thing that could have hurt me more than the zip ties did." The hearings for Murchison and Peretz were held separately. Murchison's attorney entered a plea of procedural error, that his client had followed existing security protocols. The hotel chain's legal team, perhaps sensing which way the wind was blowing, declined to support that defense and quietly amended their official security protocols document to remove any language that could be construed as authorizing restraint of hotel guests. Fowler, the regional security director, was terminated within a week. His exit package included a non-disclosure clause that the DOJ subsequently subpoenaed. The 4 other victims were located. Celestine's attorney filed on behalf of all 5 of them. The settlement, reached 7 months later, included compensation for each victim, a mandatory retraining program for security staff at all 43 Hargrove Grand properties nationwide, an independent oversight board for guest complaints, and a public acknowledgement, not an apology, because the attorneys for the hotel chain pushed back on that language, but an acknowledgement that the incidents had occurred and that the company accepted responsibility. Murchison lost his security license. The licensing board had their own process, separate from the civil suit, and it moved slower, but it moved. Peretz resigned before the hearing and took a job, according to Tasha, in his brother-in-law's HVAC business somewhere in Northern Virginia. Celestine didn't attend the settlement signing. She was in Stuttgart, Germany, coordinating a NATO logistics exercise that had been on the books for 18 months. She signed the documents electronically in a makeshift office on a German army base, between a briefing on fuel supply chains and a dinner with a Belgian general she'd known for 12 years. Her attorney called to tell her it was done. "Good," she said, and went to dinner. What she didn't know, until she returned stateside 3 weeks later, was that Tasha had testified at Murchison's licensing hearing. Voluntarily, without being subpoenaed, she had driven to the hearing on her day off and told the board exactly what she had seen. The way Murchison had looked at the general in the lobby, the way he'd dismissed her credentials, the way he'd made the decision before she'd even opened her mouth. He saw what he expected to see, Tasha told the board, not what was there. Celestine heard about the testimony through her attorney. She asked for Tasha's contact information. She wrote her a handwritten note, 3 sentences, on plain paper, in the sharp penmanship of someone who had signed a lot of important documents over 30 years. "What you did took real courage. I want you to know it mattered. Thank you." She didn't know if Tasha kept the note. She hoped she did. 6 months after the settlement, the Army Times ran a profile on the case. Not on Celestine specifically, but on what it had surfaced. The number of active duty service members who had reported similar incidents while traveling, while off duty, while out of uniform. Incidents that had never been logged, never been investigated, because the person on the other end of the zip tie hadn't had an authentication code, hadn't had a Pentagon duty line, hadn't been believed when they said who they were. The profile quoted Celestine once, at the end. She had agreed to that one sentence, approved the quote herself. Every time it takes someone with rank to fix a problem that should never have existed, we are admitting that we've failed everyone who doesn't have rank. The morning the profile ran, she was in her office at the Pentagon. 5th floor, E-ring. The sun was doing what it always does over the Potomac in October, burning low and gold and indifferent, the way rivers burn when they don't know what's happening on the banks. She had a 7 o'clock. She had always had a 7 o'clock. She finished her coffee, straightened her jacket, and walked out into the corridor where she had walked 1,000 times before, past the portraits on the wall, past the young staff officers who stepped aside when they saw her rank, past all of it, through the doors and into the morning. She had work to do. The zip ties had left marks that faded in a week. What they had uncovered took much longer to address. But that is the thing about pressure applied to the wrong person at the wrong moment. It doesn't just break the moment. It breaks open everything the moment was hiding. Murchison thought he was stopping a woman who didn't belong. He was right that she didn't belong, but not in the way he meant. She belonged somewhere far above the world he had tried to hold her in. And the call she made from his security office, it didn't just open a door for her, it opened a file on him, a file on his supervisor, and a file on every lobby and elevator and parking garage where someone else had stood, zip-tied and disbelieved, without anyone to call. Justice, when it finally lands, rarely lands only where you aimed it. If this story hit close to home, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Echoes of Justice so you never miss a story about what happens when the wrong person gets underestimated. And drop a comment below. What would you have done in her shoes?